Well, here we are once again. Joe Biden is going to be increasing tariffs on certain Chinese products. As many of you know, I've been critical of Donald Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods. Joe Biden is also putting some tariffs on Chinese goods. Well, not exactly the same, but should I oppose these tariffs if I thought that Donald Trump's were a bad idea? Well, let's talk about what it is that Joe Biden is doing. President Joe Biden is going to be doubling, tripling, and quadrupling tariffs on some Chinese goods this week. One major area is that the total tariff on Chinese electric vehicles is going to rise to 102.5% from 27.5%. That is a nearly quadrupling of the tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. So our first step in analyzing what Joe Biden is doing is to remind ourselves, what did Donald Trump do? What Donald Trump did is impose tariffs on Chinese solar panels, washing machines, steel, aluminum, many of these from many countries, except in some cases we were disproportionately getting these things from China, semiconductors, computer components, electronic devices, various types of machinery, including those used by manufacturing companies and agricultural companies. Products such as clothing, furniture, and toys saw tariffs imposed. So the question is, are tariffs on China just plain bad? Or could there be a reason why Trump's tariffs weren't a good idea and Joe Biden's on Chinese electric vehicles are a good idea? Well, let's take a couple of perspectives on this. A libertarian would say, all of these tariffs are bad. They are distorting markets. A libertarian would say, leave the market totally open. It is true, when cheaper and seemingly very good electric vehicles, and by the way, some of these new Chinese electric vehicles do seem excellent, absolutely excellent. There is no doubt. The libertarian would say, let them come into the United States with no tariff. People will go to them. It will push competition to drive down the cost of American-made electric vehicles, and it will force automakers to improve them in order to compete with the cheaper and excellent Chinese electric vehicles. That's not a terrible perspective, to be honest, when it comes to electric vehicles. It is likely the perspective that will advance electric vehicle technology and bring prices down as quickly as possible, but it will temporarily hurt the American economy during this period during which Americans say, hey, the Chinese EVs are better and they're cheaper. I'll buy that. This hurts the companies that make the components for the American electric vehicles. This hurts the workers that make the American electric vehicles. Okay, here's a reason now. So that's the libertarian perspective. Now, how about a reason that we could argue Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods were bad, but these tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles are good? And the way that would work is something like this. Trump's tariffs, including steel and aluminum, and other components that are used by agricultural companies and manufacturing companies, those were source materials or intermediate components that companies in the United States needed and used. So when Trump put a tariff on those things, it created higher prices, it disrupted supply chains, it made construction more expensive, it made farming more expensive, it increased the cost of housing, it generated retaliatory measures. And often there was no immediate American alternative to replace them. So what happened was the American companies kept buying the Chinese steel and paying the tariff, and it made construction more expensive, and it got passed on to the consumer. So you could say that's why the Trump tariffs were bad. On the other hand, and again, we're exploring perspectives here. When it comes to tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, that's a finished product, okay? Agricultural companies aren't depending on a finished electric vehicle in the way that they are depending on elements that were tariffed by Trump. Construction companies in the United States aren't depending on a finished electric vehicle in the way that they were depending on steel and aluminum. And so by putting a tariff on completed Chinese electric vehicles, maybe you are supporting the entire manufacturing chain of domestic electric vehicles. You don't use Chinese electric vehicles as a material to make some other thing so that the downside is limited, so that the downside is significant. You could argue that just tariffing Chinese electric vehicles has a very limited downside and that it actually will be a good thing for American electric vehicle companies. That would be the perspective on we like this. I've given you two different arguments. My instinct on this is that I don't want to use tariffs as a tool unless I have a really extenuating and clear reason with which to apply a tariff. Is there a case to be made that what is actually best long-term for the American economy is to let in the Chinese electric vehicles without putting a tariff on them? Yes, there is such a case to be made. Is there a case to be made that you are actually in the immediate supporting American workers by putting a tariff on Chinese electric vehicles? Yes, there is. And so to answer whether this is a good idea or a bad idea, we need a much more detailed analysis that should be done specifically of the electric vehicle market. Hopefully we will get it. Certainly can make a very compelling argument that these EV taxes on Chinese EVs from Biden are a good idea. And you can make an equally compelling argument based on the data we have, right? We need more data. You can make an equally compelling argument that they are a bad idea. I want to hear from you. info@davidpakman.com. What do you think? It is time to start thinking like voters and to make sure that kids understand the importance of voting, how it works, registering, ballot initiatives, because so many kids just have no idea. That's why I wrote the new children's book, Think Like a Voter. I can think of no better time and no more important group of folks to try to reach. The book is now available at davidpakman.com/book, where, by the way, you can get the first two books in the series as well. Think Like a Detective and Think Like a Scientist. Really important stuff. Donate them to local libraries, classrooms, read them with the kids. davidpakman.com/book.